Welcome to Riri's Story Time. Hi everyone, my name is Maria. I am aka Riri from Riri's Story Time podcast. I have been asked to do some videos on the stories that I tell, so I went ahead and decided to go ahead and do that. So the first story that I would like to record on video is the Jada Justice story. I'm sure if you've heard of this story, unless you heard of it on our recent podcast. Jada Justice was born on August 3rd, 2006 in Hobart, Indiana, to her mother, Melissa Swantek, and her father, Clarence Justice. Jada lived in Portage with her mother and her two brothers, and she loved to hang out with her cousin Angelica Castillo. Now, Angelica was much younger than her mother, of course. She was in her 20s, and every time Jada would see her, she would go and pack her bag and get ready to go with her. She just knew that she wanted to go hang out with her cousin. So Melissa ended up asking Angelica if she could take her and watch her as she went on a vacation for about 5 to 7 days. And Angelica was like, of course, not a problem. So she ended up getting and picking up Jada. So before we get too much into the story with Jada, let's talk a little bit about Angelica Castillo's past. Angelica, it has been said that allegedly her father had sexually abused her. She was just a troubled kid. She ran away back in 2002 with this boy. She ran away and made it all the way to Merritt Island, Florida. Of course, the boy that she ran away with was a suspected gang member. And of course, they had caught her in Florida, and they detained her at the Brevard County Juvenile Detention Center until her mother could come pick her up. So now, with that past and the history that she had, it was said that she didn't really have a great upbringing. So we can go ahead and fast forward it to the 2009 when Melissa went out of town. She picked up Jada, and she lived on the 3900 Missouri block in Hobart, Indiana. So the first night, her mom, Melissa, had called Angelica, and Melissa states that she had spoke to Jada that evening and, told her good night and to, be good, and that she would talk to her again tomorrow. And then the next day came, and Melissa called again that following evening to check on her daughter, and Angelica told her that she was taking a nap. So she said, tomorrow, I'll have her call you when she gets up. So, days passed, and every time that Melissa calls, there's an excuse from Angelica. And finally, on Tuesday, June 16th, Angelica reported Jada missing. Now, Angelica states that she went to a gas station to run and get milk and cigarettes. And the problem that I have with this situation is that on the 3900 block of Missouri, if you go straight down, not even 500 feet, there's a gas station there to the right. But instead, Angelica went to the four-way stop, made a left-hand turn, went 2 blocks down, and then made a right-hand turn and went to, I believe it was a Marathon that's 2.5 blocks away. So she states that she went to that gas station to go grab the milk and the cigarettes. She left Jada in the car, went inside, not even 5 minutes, she stated. And by the time she came back out, she said Jada was gone. She did say that there was three individuals outside, and that she was telling the police that they could have abducted her. Um, the police went and they questioned them, and they come to find out that they had, nothing to do with this. So after, and mind you, Hobart and Gary are like where she lived was right on the border. So Hobart, Indiana, if she would have went straight to that gas station that's 500 feet down from her house, Hobart PD would have been the ones who had to, do this whole investigation. But instead, because she went to 2 blocks away on that line, that border right there to Gary, she had to report her missing to Gary PD. So Gary PD is the one who had to, start the investigation. So after this happened, Indiana literally, they had all police departments jump in. So Hobart jumped in, of course, Gary, the FBI, the U.S. Marshals, they were all searching for Jada. I do recall seeing, helicopters. I saw police dogs. Said they had the canine unit, and they were questioning all the residents in that area. So they checked around Melissa's home. They went and searched there in Portage, which is maybe about 10 minutes away from Hobart. And then they went and started searching everywhere in the neighborhood on the Missouri Street. They went from house to house, knocking on doors and asking if it was okay for them to search people's homes, because they wanted to clear and make sure that no one in the neighborhood had abducted her. So they took Angelica in for questioning. And while in questioning, the Gary PD confirmed that she was under the influence of heroin. She was literally out of her mind as she attempted to hit one of the investigators and was yelling, God is taking care of Jada. God is watching over her now. So that was a little suspicious to them. So on June 18th, police had obtained a search warrant to investigate Angelica's home, which was located about three houses down from where we used to reside. I do recall coming home from work that evening, and police officers were detouring people to, go the other way. And I had thought to myself, like, I mean, there was just so many police officers and so many news media. And I told the police officer, hey, I live on this block. And of course, he had did his due diligence, and he asked me for my license, and I showed it to him, and he matched up the address and just told me, that there's a little girl missing and that they were looking for her. So he let me through pretty much, it was like a barricade of police cars. I started to wonder, like, thinking, are my kids okay? Is there something going on? Is it anything related to my family? Because this block wasn't really that big, and there wasn't many kids on the block that, fit this description. The police officer did show me a picture of the little girl, and I immediately in my mind thought, wow, she looks a lot like, my daughter. But I told him I remember seeing her the week prior, but I just couldn't remember what day I saw her. It was on my way home from work one of those days, and I saw her in the front yard at 3925 Missouri Street. So I start driving up and pulling up into my driveway, and there are media, just news outlets, vans everywhere, and they start like coming towards me, and I'm like, oh shit, there's a lot of people, and I'm like, they said it's 3925, not 3969 Missouri Street. And these reporters, they started just like yelling, do you feel safe knowing that there's someone who kidnapped a 2-year-old girl, just a couple of houses down from you? And I was just like, wait, what? They were sticking, microphones in my face. They asked me if I had children, and I was like, yeah, I have children. I have two-year-olds. And of course, I remember the crazy part was this one news lady stuck the microphone in my face and was like, twins, and I was like, no, not twins. And I asked him, I'm like, where are they saying that, this little girl was kidnapped from? And they said, at the gas station in Gary, which is where I thought was a little weird, because of the fact that I know there's a gas station closer to her house that she could have went to. So I was a little thrown off by that. And they can tell by my facial expression that I was like kind of thrown off by all that. And they said, I go, that's just weird to me. And they asked, well, why is that weird? And I explained to them, we have a gas station that's closer to her home, number one. They do have surveillance cameras, both outside and inside. And I don't understand why she would just go into somewhere that's just further from our house. It's a complete inconvenience. I see my neighbors, they always go to that gas station that's closer to our house. I've even seen Angelica, go there to that, her and her boyfriend go to that same gas station that's closer to the house. So I just thought that was weird. Now, I know that she had said that she allegedly thought that, there was 3 African-American males that were at the other gas station, and she tried to say that, maybe they abducted Jada. And before I could say anything, my neighbor was just like, I highly doubt that. Now, she literally took the words out of my mouth. I lived in Gary off of 25th and Grant Street, where the old Walgreens was, at the corner where Joe May would sell his peanuts. They called him the Peanut Man. But getting back to my point, abducting a child in our community rarely ever happened. My in-laws still reside there to this day. And if we had not moved here to Florida, my kids would still be in Gary visiting their grandparents. And I know that that's one thing that would not ever happen, if somebody would come and abduct them from their grandparents or that community. My in-laws still reside there till today. And they would walk all the way to Mr. Joe's, the candy store, by themselves, and no one ever tried to take these kids. And trust me, if they did, they tried to give them right back. But at any rate, so this is something that I was not worried about. Now, if this had been like the 90s, I still wouldn't worry about abduction. I would be more concerned about, murder, maybe an accidental drive-by, because everybody knows back in the 90s, Gary was considered the murder capital at that point. But that was about it. I would not think anything about someone abducting, a child in that community, in our community. So Jada's father did do an interview with AP News, and here's what he had to say.
Hi, how are you? This is for the missing child, Jada Justice.
Oh, okay.
She got kidnapped at this gas station right here.
We've been passing around to gas stations and like grocery stores, and been walking door to door in the neighborhood and passing them out. And just like I said last night, all I want is Jada's safe return. I'm not out to try to prosecute nobody, whoever's holding her. I'm not trying to do nothing like that, cause them harm or, any problems in their life. All I'm asking, if they gotta drop her off at a fire station, library, police station, just drop off at somewhere that somebody could get to her and start identifying and bring her back home to me. Mother's cousin, yeah.
But even though it's a relative, you don't believe her story?
No, I don't believe it, because it don't check out. It don't check out to me. It don't seem right, It's like, why would you park on one side of the building with a child in there to run in and get some milk and, cigarettes, and all you had to do is pull up in the front, lock the doors, and run inside, or whatever the case may be.
You don't believe it's the
I
truth?
don't believe it. I don't believe it. Myself, I don't believe it because there's too much stuff that, why you going to park on one side of the building when it's raining outside, pouring rain? That's, if you got to go in the store and get some milk, why wouldn't you park in the front and run in the house and grab the milk and everything? And why would you leave the doors unlocked so somebody could grab a child out the car?
So I agree with the father, to use the excuse that, you went into a gas station and you left her there, pulling up into the side of the gas station when you could have pulled at the front door. There's just so many things that are not, and we're not right with that story. So Angelica was trying to throw, the police off any way she could. There was a trailer that was behind that gas station that she had mentioned, and I do remember them going through that trailer. I mean, with dogs, I think they checked that trailer at least 2 or 3 times a day, which I don't know where the trailer even came from, but I do remember that when it first got parked there, that it was a little weird that was even there, but they searched it and nothing was there. She had, she had the police searching abandoned homes. There was just so much manpower that went into this, and it's really sad because people were taken away from their families, all because of a lie. So at this point now, they are checking everybody's house, and they came to my house and they asked if they could search my home, and I'm like, of course, I have nothing to hide. So I did ask them, that when they get to my baby's room, that's across from the kitchen, if they could just, be quiet because, my 2 daughters were sleeping. And if you have ever raised two-year-olds, you know how hard it is to get them to go to sleep and take a nap. So that was all I asked. You could search the whole house. Just please, make sure that you're quiet with that. So they started in the lower floor and they cleared it, and then they came upstairs, and I'm waiting in the living room, and all of a sudden, while I'm waiting there patiently in the living room, I hear one of the officers, like, his voice is like panicked, and he's calling for his sergeant for backup. And I can tell that he's really nervous, and he says, "I found the victim." My heart at that point drops, what? I'm thinking to myself, what is he talking about? So he comes around the corner, and this officer had my daughter Kaya in his arms, and I literally was like, that's my child. And he was pushing back, ma'am, you need to stay your distance. And Kaya started crying, and she was like, mommy, because she didn't know who this guy was, and he was thinking that this little girl was Jada. And it was weird because I never thought that a situation like that would happen, to the point where I started to fear for my life, because he was telling his partner to put me in handcuffs at this point. And I was kind of like, hold up. Let's go to my living room, go look at the pictures on the wall. There's family photos on there. You'll see that, this is my daughter. And the officer who had Kaya went back into the room, and he picked up my other daughter, Nayeli. So at this time, he had both of my 2-year-olds in his arms. And he comes out, saying, these aren't twins. And I told him, yeah, thank you, Master of the Obvious. I never said they were twins. I said I have 2-year-olds. I am freaking out at this point, because they are thinking that this is literally Jada. And I will say that, yes, Jada looked a lot like my daughter Kaya. They had a lot of resemblance, but I started to feel like my heart race. I was starting to get into panic mode because they were trying to put me in handcuffs and they had my daughters, my babies in their hands. Well, luckily for me, one of somebody that I knew was on the Gary PD, and he literally is like running, into our driveway, and he's screaming like, "That's not Jada, that's not Jada, that's her daughter Kaya." And he said, and the other daughter is Lala. So it was a sign of relief for me because, number one, this guy thought I kidnapped somebody's child, and number two, I was afraid for my life at that point because I didn't know what they were. I mean, when he said put handcuffs on her, that literally scared the shit out of me. I'll be honest with that. So at any rate, the officer, who had Kaya and Nayeli, he came over to me and he gave me my daughters, and he had tears in his eyes. And I quickly thought to myself, like, I should let him have it because that scenario could have escalated. Something could have happened. I could have been shot. Like, everything was just going through my head. But I had to quickly stop myself and think, put myself in his shoes. Like, what would be going through your mind if you, saw this? And I think that for when he saw my daughter Kaya, it gave him like some peace and some hope. And then of course to find out that, that wasn't Jada, it meant that she was still out there. So, at that point I grabbed my daughters and I told them that, Jada was in my prayers. Later it was revealed that blood was found in Angelica's home. So on June 23rd, it was revealed in the media that Angelica was under narcotics when she called the police on that day and reported Jada missing. So on June 24th, just 11 days after Jada had went missing, unfortunately, her body was found in a container that was filled with concrete in a swampy area in rural Westville, Indiana. It was sad as there was multiple fractures on her skull. And I don't know if I mentioned that, Angelica had a boyfriend named Tim. And it was said that, allegedly that Tim was a drug dealer and that him and Angelica were both high off of heroin. And the way that this all just goes down when the truth starts to come out it's just very, very heartbreaking. They were arrested, the both of them, Tim and Angelica, in Valparaiso. Now, they went to Valparaiso to go buy more drugs, and they got charged with murder and as far as neglect and battery. So, and of course, for Angelica providing the police with false information. So, what transpired is that, of course, Tim was thinking like, I'm not going to sit here and, take the fall for this. He pretty much flipped on Angelica, and he ended up telling the police what had happened. And what had happened was Jada had spilled, a drink like a Kool-Aid or something, and she started whooping her. And Tim admitted that he had held Jada down as Angelica whooped her. Mind you, they both were high on heroin when they were doing this. So after Jada wasn't crying, Angelica had put her in the corner and started to hit her with her fist closed. And at that point, Jada was crying. So they thought that Jada had, fell asleep in the corner, and their high was coming down. So they decided that, we need to go buy more heroin. So what do? They pick up Jada, they put her in the car, they put her in her, baby seat. And at that point, Tim was thinking that she's not alive, like something's wrong with her. But she still kind of had like a pulse, according to him. So they go and they pick up their heroin, go back to the house, and as they're taking her out, they put her, in the house, and at this point, she's not breathing. And they're trying to, shake her, and Tim tells, that he allegedly told Angelica, I told you to stop. Like, you overdid it. Like, you hit her too hard. So they just go on with their evening, and Tim puts her in a garbage bag and ties up the garbage bag, and then him and Angelica go get high on heroin, and they fall asleep. So the next morning, they wake up and they realize that this is not a dream. Holy shit, this is reality. Like, this little girl is dead. So at that point, this is horrible. So if you have, especially when it comes to children, I'm going to give you your trigger warning now. Jada was placed in a container, and Tim tried to burn her body. This is how you can tell some people are so uneducated. If you grill something, it gets probably up to 600 degrees. In order to disintegrate a body, it has to get between 1600 and 1800 degrees. So this moron, and I will say that, he attempted to burn Jada's body with propane. The propane exploded in his face. Karma at its finest. It should have blew off his head, in my opinion, but it literally burnt his face. And after they realized that they couldn't burn her body, they then decided that they were going to, place her body in concrete, wait for it to dry, and then they took, the container to Westville. Now, Westville from Hobart is a good 35-40 minute drive, especially where they had placed her, the container at. And it's horrible. So they basically ended up throwing the concrete container in a swamp. And Tim did lead the investigators to Jada's body. Both Tim and Angelica would plead not guilty. Surprise, surprise to that. And then they would, of course, have to stand trial. So in early July, Jada was finally laid to rest. A few days after after she was laid to rest, the father, Clarence, he did end up getting custody of the two sons who were under Melissa's care. And then they also had charged Melissa with neglect of dependent, resulting in death. Now, I kind of have a little issue with that because the prosecutors have stated that Melissa put her daughter in this situation. And to me, the charges of neglect against, Melissa, how did she know that was going to happen? Like, I'm sure if she knew that was going to happen, she wouldn't have allowed her daughter to go. Well, I'm not the only one that feels this way. A judge also felt that way, and he literally dismissed those charges. So, and just an FYI, and this is allegedly said, that Melissa did reach out to Clarence, Jada's father, and asked if he would be willing to watch Jada, and that his response allegedly was, "It's not my week." So I wanted to make sure I put that out there. Now, at trial, Tim would strike a plea deal, with the prosecutors to avoid the death penalty. And he did, explain that Angelica repeatedly hit Jada with a belt with her closed fist. So because Tim did lead the investigators to Jada's body and did explain to them that, what transpired and the role that Angelica played and the role that he played, he got a lesser sentence because he wanted to avoid the death penalty. So Tim did admit that he had held Jada down as Angelica did hit her. He said he did not abuse Jada, that it was Angelica who did, and who she was the aggressor. So Angelica's defense lawyer tried to blame all this on Tim, by saying that he was just so impatient with Jada that he would throw her into the bathtub at least twice during her stay with the couple. And he did bring up the heavy drug use and claimed that there was no intent for murder. But one thing that Angelica, where she messed up is when her and Tim were arrested, they put them both in the same interrogation room. And if you know anything about interrogation rooms, you would know that they are always recording you. And for some reason, this pendeja says, she whispered to Tim while they're in there saying, we could say it was an accident. They can't prove that we did it. And of course, they played that in court, and the jury would only deliberate about 2 hours. And if you know any jury that deliberates just in 2 hours, that's not good. So they found, of course, Angelica guilty of Jada's murder. Tim was sentenced to 40 years for his role in the murder, and Angelica Castillo would be sentenced to a minimum of 65 years in prison, which I hope she does all 65 years. So thanks for joining me today. This has been exciting, trying something new, doing a story, as you record it and put it on YouTube. Again, if you don't catch us here on YouTube, you can always catch me on Riri Storytime podcast on any podcast platform that you listen to. And if you want to see more stories like this on video, please hit the like button and the subscribe button, of course, so I can grow my audience here on YouTube. Thank you all for spending time with me today. Have a great week.